What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. In today's episode, I am speaking with a good friend of mine, Marc O'Dwyer, founder and CEO of Irish software business Big Red Cloud. Now, Marc is a very successful entrepreneur, but he's also vice chairman, I should say, of the Irish SME Association. That's Small and Medium Enterprises. I first met Marc about 20 years ago. We are members of the same gym, and it was he who convinced me to enter my first triathlon, the British Bay Triathlon of 2001. That is now almost 20 years to the day. We're still good friends, and I do credit Marc with turning me into the fitness fanatic that I have become, very much like Marc himself. But today's episode is not about sports or fitness in any way. We are going to be talking about sales and the selling process, and that is something that Marc is extraordinarily good at. Marc has bought and sold multiple companies. He's done mergers. He's been voted number one salesperson in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, I think it is, or certainly his business has. And I wanted to bring him on today because I believe sales is one of the critical skills that you can acquire in life. You see, anything you want to achieve in life requires you, firstly, to sell to yourself before you sell on to others. So, for example, if you wanted a pay rise, you've got to sell your value to the company, to your boss. You're not going to get a pay rise unless you've convinced him of that. If you want a home loan, you've got to go and speak to your mortgage broker or whatever. You've got to convince the bank manager, basically, that your loan application is worth taking on. And indeed, if you want to raise capital for your business or for some sort of investment opportunity, you have got to sell both you and your skills and your investment proposal to any potential investor. This is all, like, no matter which one of those it is, the process is very, very similar in all cases. And so the object of this week's podcast is for you basically to understand and indeed, if you can, master this skill over the coming years. So without further ado, let us dive into the episode with Marc O'Dwyer. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. I'm your host, Gavin J. Gallagher, and on this podcast I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset, your behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. Welcome to the show. All right, Marc, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Gavin. Nice for you to have me on. Thank you very much.
Not at all, Marc. It's a pleasure. You and I have known each other for many, many years now. We're just working it out there, and it's just over 20 years now.
That's
and
correct.
We're very good friends. And I'd even go so far as to say that you're nearly a family member now that I've.
Yeah, I got included in one or two of the Gallagher functions, which was pretty special. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much, because you don't let too many people in. So I do appreciate it.
Yes, Marc. Only let in the best, there's a lot of people here. You and I are very good friends, but the audience may never have heard of Marc O'Dwyer. So just for the purpose of enlightening the audience, who is Marc O'Dwyer and what does he do?
So you'd like me to tell, you're not going to read the bio that I sent you? Okay.
No, your little elevator pitch, if you will.
I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in business for close on 30 years. It'll be 30 years in January. I specialize in sales and marketing. But I happened to stumble upon accounting software because I understood accounts. I'm not an accountant. Everybody thinks I am. And I set up a company called Big Red Cloud a number of years ago. So I've been in the accounting software business for the best part of 25 years, I think. No, 28 years. So as I said, I started off in sales and marketing. I started with sales in Pitney Bowes, selling franking machines, which is a really good stomping ground to get your training in sales. Showed you how to accept rejection, which is a really important part of the sales process, and how to celebrate successes as well. But also to understand that you probably get more rejections than you get success. Yeah. So you do need to be hard-nosed some aspects of sales.
You need to build a resilience.
You do. So I went from sales career to sales career, and I ultimately ended up deciding to set up my own business as an entrepreneur. And that was 30 years ago. So it'll be the 12th January 1992. So on the 12th January next year, I'll be 30 years in business, and I've been through, I think it's 4 recessions now.
Well, we'll
including
get into
COVID.
all of that. That's a nice intro, well rehearsed, Mark. And I was just looking for a little elevator pitch, but you've given us a good intro into some of your backstory, and that's where I usually start with these interviews. That I like to kind of start out with a bit of context, just so that the audience can kind of understand where you're coming in from. So can you just sort of take us back to young Mark O'Dwyer, kind of leaving either school or college and going to get his first job and like fending for yourself? Like, what did that?
Yeah, all 17 and 18-year-olds, Gavin, have aspirations as to what they think they'd like to do in the future. And what I thought I'd like to do was be in sports management. So I had got an interview for Loughborough College, the best sports college in the world, essentially. And they told me if I got onto the Irish schools rugby team, I wouldn't need anything in my leaving cert. So as an immature 17-year-old, I came back and I concentrated on rugby, not my studies. And the first step of getting onto the Irish schools team is to get onto the Leinster team. And the morning of my Leinster trial, I had a temperature of 104 and I couldn't move. And that was the end of my chance of getting onto the Irish schools, and hence my end of my chance to get into Loughborough. So then I had to kind of struggle. I think the mocks had gone at stage, the leaving cert mocks had gone at that stage. So I managed to blag an interview in the College of Marketing, DIT, which is now gone to TUD, Technology University Dublin, and I got into a retail marketing course, which was just fantastic. It suited me. It was actually funded by the European Union, so I got £27 a week, which was great, because when you're focused on money and you got money as a college student, it was great. Now, we won't tell your listeners that I spent most of it on Space Invaders in an arcade, but that's another day's work. So look, then my parents wanted me in a permanent pensionable job. They thought the bank was the place to go. Little did they know what was going to happen subsequent to the mid to late 80s. And I did get a job in AIB, and AIB said, look, if you get onto the All-Ireland AIB rugby team, we will get you a full-time position in AIB. So what they did is they split the country in two. The top half played the bottom half. It was down in Tone Park in Limerick, and 10 minutes of the match, I pulled my hamstring, and that was the end of my banking career. So in my case, there's been a lot of faithful things that have come in and redirected the course of my career journey. And I think people will find that throughout their own lives. I'm not unique to that situation. So look, then I had to scramble around, decide what I would do. Told my parents I wanted to get into sales. That was the worst thing I could have said to them, but I pursued that. I got into Pitney Bowes selling franking machines, and within the first 2 or 3 months, I won top salesman prize, and they realized that Mark had found his niche. Now, if we roll back to when they spoke to the career guidance in school in St. Michael's, that guy said that my best asset was my tongue. So clearly sales was something that I was destined to do. So yeah, so look, Pitney Bowes was a great grounding. It really polished me off and gave me the career I needed in terms of progression. I then got poached to a company selling fax machines. I don't know if your listeners will actually know what a fax machine is, but
you're showing your age now, Mark. What's a fax machine?
It's the old form of communication where you'd be able to send a printed letter from one location to another location, and it would come out on a thermal imaged piece of paper at the other end. And it was, it was a legal document, and it was a predecessor to email. DocuSign and things like that. So, but it was in the early days, Gavin, when I'd have to go and I'd say, Gavin, will you buy a fax machine? And you'd say, yeah, well, if my brother Shane buys a fax machine, I'll buy one. So you ended up getting 2 sales. So it was the early days.
Because there wasn't any point in you having it on your own. It was important for other customers and stuff to have it too.
Yeah, you needed to communicate with people. Now, a lot of early adopters of fax machines would have been the legal lawyers and the accountants, where they actually needed documents sent through and fro between the different offices. So look, then I got poached to sell accounting software to accountants in practice, Incomplete Records, a company called Orchard Software in Dunleary. They promised me the sun, moon and stars in training, never gave it to me. So I ended up having to bring a computer home and learn it myself. I was a young father at the time, so I had to, wait till Amy was in bed and then study the accounts. But look, I had a good accounting teacher in school who gave me a good grounding for debits and credits and 3-in-1 bookkeeping. So I had a good understanding of it. And then I realized very early on into my career selling software accountants that if you could sell to an accountant, and this is with all due respect to your listeners that are accountants, if you can sell to an accountant, you can sell to anybody because they're pretty tight. So I was pretty successful at that, and did that for about 2 or 3 years. And then I got poached back to a company that I'd been working with the fax machines on to set up a computer distribution. They were a Panasonic distributor. They just got the license to distribute Panasonic laptops and printers. So I put the deal together for the printers that all went out to the ESB shops. I don't know if people will ever remember that. But on your ESB bill, you were able to buy a computer and a Panasonic printer. And I put that deal together. So we were phenomenally successful. And the deal there, Gavin, was that if I went over target, they would set up a limited company and I'd be a shareholder automatically. We went 180% over target. We set up the company in the January. And then the next thing, Panasonic, who were joint Smurfit with Panasonic Smurfit were the joint venture in Ireland. Panasonic bought Smurfit out, looked at all the divisions, looked at that reseller selling all the computers and printers and said, we're taking that back in-house. And they basically sucked me back in as product manager. So I went from, significant earnings down to a fixed salary, pensionable job, working under Japanese managing director Tony Tanimoto, which I did learn an awful lot from because the Japanese have a certain way of doing business, if any of your listeners have worked with them. But it suppressed my personality. And I spent a year there not happy. And I just didn't know how to get out of it. And I went for a walk one day with an old colleague that worked in the company I sold the fax machines in. And we said we'd set up a business on our own. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. Now, that was all very well, Gavin, but I had just bought my second house. I had invested significantly. It was a big jump because I had been earning quite a bit of money on the printers and laptops, and we had a baby. So it was a big decision to do. My wife supported, and we just threw our hat at it. After 2 years, everything wasn't going great. You'd like to think everything goes right all the time, but it doesn't. Going into business on your own is very difficult, and you do need to take the hard knocks. It turned out I was doing 77% of the business compared to 23% my partner was doing. And so, look, we built up a debt with the revenue. And I said to him, I said, look, something has to happen here. So you can't take a wage until we start paying back the revenue. And he ended up deciding to leave. The auditors at the time told me to liquidate. I said, no, I'm not doing that. I will pay back the revenue. And that's what I did. So we spent 3 years paying the revenue back. But that was my original company. And I'm still going here in 2021.
And did you have to buy
1994.
Did you have to buy him out, or did he just walk away?
Yeah. So I effectively bought him out, Gavin, by taking on the responsibility of the debt to the revenue and to the other creditors. So that's how I bought him out.
And tell me this, Mark, you obviously found your niche in sales and you're the consummate salesman, straight away hitting salesman of the year and all that kind of stuff. But does that translate into becoming a good entrepreneur in your opinion? Yes or no? No,
absolutely.
You had a lot of learning to do.
Yeah, look, so does a good product guy who's a great idea become an entrepreneur overnight? No, he doesn't. Does a good salesman who is good at sales become an entrepreneur overnight? There's so many facets to owning and running a business, Gavin, that sales, obviously it's a key part of it, but it's not the only part. You need to understand the accounts. You need to understand the customer journey. You need to understand your technology. You need to understand supply chain. You've got to build a team. And I think the success to being a successful entrepreneur, or the key to being a successful entrepreneur, is employing people that can do jobs that you can't do and letting them get on to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. If you're a control freak, you're never going to be successful as an entrepreneur. You need to let go and let people do the jobs that they can do better than you and just let them fly. If they make mistakes, they can be fixed, Gavin. That's a key learning for people that are going into business on their own.
That's great insight. Yeah. It's, and tell me this, Mark, looking back, the world today is very different to the world that was, 30 years ago when you were starting out. And can you just, there's a lot of young listeners here that will have no clue some of the challenges that you faced in the first year or two. Can you kind of just describe some of the challenges that you faced, versus today where you've got, instant, communication, and you've got, the ability to kind of get your brand out in front of millions of people sort of overnight pretty much?
Yeah, so they've obviously a lot more access to communication and funding than I did back in the day. It was a struggle just to get a simple overdraft from a bank. I think it went to 30 banks just to get a £5,000 overdraft back in the day. There's so many businesses out there that are offering, albeit at higher rates if you're a startup, but at least you have the access that we wouldn't have had back then. And the communication is so much easier nowadays because of the internet. To start off, we had to go door to door, putting flyers into people's houses, their offices in Fitzwilliam Square and Merrion Square. That's how we started off, offering a free Panasonic TV if somebody bought a fax machine. Your listeners say, why the hell would you have done that? Because the paper in the fax machine ran out and it was a recurring business. So the more fax machines you got out there, you were starting to build up your recurring business. So there was method in my madness. Yeah. So it's thinking outside of the box is a key thing. Other things that were the marketing, it's a lot easier now. So you literally had radio, newspaper, billboards and buses back then.
Yeah.
But now look at the plethora of avenues you have to get your brand known, all the different social media platforms, on top of all the old stuff. You still have the buses, you still have the billboards, you still have the newspapers, obviously not as widely used as before. But the social media marketing that is to hand at the moment for new entrepreneurs is simply phenomenal. And if it's done right, it can be done inexpensively and you can get really, really good results.
Yeah.
So people have changed a lot as well. The buying persona, Gavin, has changed. Before you had to sell to people.
Yeah.
And why did you have to sell people? Because they didn't have as much knowledge, because they didn't have as much access to knowledge as they do now. There's so much information on Google alone for somebody. If they're wondering they're going to buy XYZ product, all they do is put in XYZ product into Google and they can learn about it. Whereas back in the day, you had to explain to them what the product was and then explain why your product was better than your competitor next door. So the buyers now have become a lot more savvy, and you're not really selling to them. You're just trying to encourage them and assure them that your service or your product is the one that they should be investing in.
And so, yeah, because I mean, there's quite a difference between your initial sort of what you had to do with the customer. You had to sit down and explain all this kind of stuff and then cajole them kind of over the, get them to sign the document. Nowadays, it's so different. Is there still like skills in a salesperson? Or are they very, very different skills now? I mean, when you're hiring somebody, what are you looking for?
Well, interpersonal skills won't have changed. So your ability to interact with a person, that's key when you're interviewing somebody. So that hasn't changed, and that will continue on for forevermore. The rapport. Now, like more and more, Gavin, a lot of the rapport has been done through WhatsApp, email, and just messaging, instant messaging. So you don't get the personality across. So what I look for is somebody who is prepared to speak on the phone. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of younger listeners have spent so much time on social media that they're nervous of speaking on the phone. So if there's a course out there to build your confidence, to interact with somebody, either on Zoom, like we're doing now, or on Teams, or on the phone alone, I think that is a key skill that younger listeners should try and look to. I have a couple of daughters, as you know, Gavin, and I was appalled when, during the summer, I'd bring them in here, and when the receptions went on holidays, I'd throw them on reception. They said, no, we can't talk to customers. I said, why not? Because we don't do that. We send messages. I said, well, you're going to do that. So that is like, it was a key learning that I needed to embed in my daughters, but I think it's a key thing for people nowadays. So I look for somebody with interpersonal skills, and we still communicate. So although at the moment we drive relevant traffic to the website to take out a free trial, we still put in the effort and make a phone call and talk to those people and get to understand what their requirements are for our bigger cloud software, so that we can tweak it to meet what they need in order to get the best out of our software for their.
And I guess also the better the personality and the kind of relationship you have with them, the less likely they are to kind of pull out of the relationship. I mean, if you're just dealing with someone over text and chat bots and all this kind of stuff, there's no personal kind of connection with anyone in the business.
No, there's not. You're right. You're 100% right, Gavin. It's building that relationship and building a trust, building a confidence in you as the salesperson and the company you're representing, that you're going to be there for them. And, you're the initial face of the business to try and close the deal, but you need to reassure them then there's other people in the support, in our case, that in the support division, or it might be in administration in other companies, or in service, or whatever it might be, that they are there and they will pick up the mantle. However, if you're not happy with them, you'll always be here to interact with them in the future on your journey with this business for whatever number of years you're going to be a customer. That's key.
And tell me, Mark, have you gone through, I mean, thinking back to the early stages, have you gone through any kind of major mindset shifts or kind of realizations that, whoa, I'm way off on this, and had to change direction in order to kind of keep it going?
Yeah, well, I think I spoke to you earlier on about the time 4 salespeople walked out on me. And so we were left, we'd no salespeople left. So I went out and I did the demonstration myself and realized my demo was pretty good. And we then recorded it and we used to send it out to customers. And if they bought, then they got a discount on their annual support moving forward. So that was a major shift where I realized I actually didn't need reps out on the road per se. And I didn't have the car expenses and the mileage expenses and the overnights and the lunches. And we were able to sell as much with people in-house than we were on the road. So that's been a major, so the transformation from digital, from the manual where we had people out knocking on doors to having people in-house, has been, absolutely incredible. Other changes are, yes, we went down the route of features that we thought customers would like. We didn't do enough research from our customer base. We went to the expense of developing the product and then released it quickly to find we had to bring it right back. Like I know one product, we brought a stock module out and we sold it to 100 customers, and we realized there was a serious bug in it, and we actually gave all 100 customers back their money because it wasn't retrievable. So there was a complete 180-degree turn on that one to try and help our reputation. But the very fact that we took it on the chin, we gave them their money back, we accepted responsibility for our mistakes. The loyalty we got from those customers thereafter was like unbelievable.
That's great. And tell me, Mark, if you were to do that again, would you go about it a different way?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I would have done differently. When we went to the cloud, Gavin, initially, we had been introduced to a company that had code conversion software. So they were going to convert our Big Red Book software to run in the cloud. So we engaged in a contract. It was a 12-month contract. We were 10 months into the contract. Every month they showed us progression. And in month 10, they went out of business. And what we realized after that was that they were actually showing us screenshots of work they hadn't done. It was just PowerPoint. So they actually hadn't done anything at all. And they went bust, and we were left with nothing. But in hindsight, that was a good lesson, because having an old style desktop product converted to run the cloud is not the most efficient. So we set about rewriting Big Red Cloud from the start, and that was a better option in the end. But it took me 10 months and a considerable amount of money to learn that lesson. So there are things I'd have done differently. The other thing I would have done differently is that we tried to list on the stock exchange in 2015.
Oh, I remember that.
The alternative investment market on London, Gavin. We got caught in the headlights by a broker in London who said, absolutely, you can list on the stock exchange. And we took them at face value. And we got everything done. We did all our due diligence. We did our verification, which is quite an intense process. And we got out onto the roadshow. So it's a 2-week roadshow for anybody who doesn't know. You set a budget on what the business is going to achieve. So you've just got one business plan. So it's business plan A, and you go out to all these investors and you're looking to raise X amount of money. We were looking to raise 5 million. And by the Tuesday of the second week, we had raised 4.1 million.
Wow.
And we're going to close it on the Friday. And an Israeli company issued a profit warning, and all the small cap investors went running for cover, and our brokers couldn't fill the 900 grand gap. So I learned from that is always have a plan B. So if we had a business plan that said, well, here's a plan B for 4 million, we would have.
That's amazing. Yeah. So,
but like, I was green, I was innocent, I was a little bit naive, to be honest with you, Gavin. And unfortunately, that happens in business. We're not all knowledgeable out there. I certainly am. I'm a lot more knowledgeable now than I ever was. But it's only through the hard knocks that you get in business that you actually learn these things. And sometimes they can be so hard, they knock you off your pedestal completely and you go out of business. I've been very lucky that I've had a very, very strong business. I have a very strong team behind me. And it's only because of that I'm still in business today.
How much did that adventure cost you, the attempted listing?
Yeah, a 6-figure sum, Gavin. I can't give you the exact
big
figure.
money. Yeah,
I did negotiate. Like, I was smart enough to negotiate a no fee basis with the broker, but I had all the accountants' fees, I had all the lawyers' fees, and then you also have to do PR when you're listing on the stock exchange. All that had to be paid up front. So there was it was a significant six-figure sum. But as I say, the company was pretty strong and we were able to survive. So what we did after that is we kind of went in under our stone, licked all our wounds, and said, look, we're just going to make the company profitable moving forward. And that's what we've done. And we've made Bigger Cloud like a serious success. We've over 75,000 businesses using our products through our 3 products, our Bigger Book Accounts, our Bigger Book Payroll, and our Bigger Cloud accounting software. And it doesn't matter what type of business. I know you're specifically in construction and building and architecture. So we have all those people using our software. We've got builders, we've got construction workers, we've electricians, we've got the butcher, we've got the baker, we've got the candlestick maker. We've got everybody that rents the buildings that you guys develop as customers. We didn't go down the vertical route, which has played into our hand because of COVID. Because if you think of a vertical software company in the hospitality area, they were snookered during COVID. They would have had to freeze all payments with their customers and had no cash flow. The same would have gone for like sports centers or hotels, restaurants, cafes. But because we're cross vertical, we actually in 2020 we were 30% ahead of 2019, and we're already 27% ahead of 2020 this year.
Yeah. Tell us, Mark, just in terms of the principles of sales. I mean, for somebody who isn't, there's often, you said at the beginning, your parents when you told them you wanted to be a salesperson, they were immediately like, no. I mean, because there's often that kind of view of salespeople, but like sales is a very important skill to have. And I mean, if you want to do anything, you have to be able to sell. You have to be able to either sell yourself or sell your product or sell the proposal or the investment that you're trying to raise money on. So give us, in your view, just what are the kind of the key components that you need to master to actually be a good salesperson?
Okay, so the first one is body language, Gavin. So you need to come in as if you're confident. That's irrespective. So one way of dealing with that is to stand yourself in your mirror in your bathroom and look yourself in the eye and just give yourself and develop a very confident persona from the very start. Body language when you're going in. Don't go in with your arms folded. I know you can see me now, but your listeners can't. Like if you're going in there, you're already negative. Don't have your hands crossed in front of you. Have your hands open. Nice strong handshake. That's huge. One of these wet limped handshake is a disaster where you just literally offer your fingers.
The wet sponge.
That, yeah. It's like, just don't. Like whether you're confident or not, you need to pretend you're confident. So there's lots of people who are shy who come on podcasts or do whatever else and they're out of their comfort zone. So the first thing you need to be is out of your comfort zone and show your confidence. The second thing is you need to show the features and sell the benefits. Okay, so people want to see whether that's yourself, what a feature of yourself, and whether it's your career to date and you're trying to get a job, or whether it's a product or service you're selling. That's the features. But the guy who's buying or the girl who's buying is only interested in the benefits to them. So that's key. So show the features, sell the benefits. They're key. You have 2 ears. God gave you 2 ears to listen, twice as much as speak. Now, I know I speak an awful lot, but believe, in a different scenario, Gavin, I know I haven't drawn a breath here in this, but I'm just trying to get out as much information for your listeners as possible. But it's key to listen. And why do you need to listen? You need to listen as to why the customer needs whatever you are selling them or whatever your competitor is selling them. And if you can find out one key thing that they say that your software or your product or your service has over and above your competitor, you zone in on that. But you'll only find that out if you listen. If you overtalk somebody, they're just going to get annoyed with you.
Yeah.
Okay. So confidence, show the feature, sell the benefits, and listen. They're three key things that I would think, no matter whether you're, as you say, you're trying to get funding for a business, a building project you're trying to do, and you're selling yourself to the bank. You just need to be really confident. You need to show the features and sell the benefits. And the benefits in that case are what the bank are going to get on the back of backing you, and the figures that are involved in terms of what return investment they'll be getting, and just give them that bit of confidence in your presentation.
And listening is the big one, all right, because what I always actually say to my kind of people that are listening to me is that you have to understand the motivation of the person on the other side. And if you're listening, you can actually figure that out quickly enough. Whereas if you go in, say, this is the deal, this is how it has to be, you haven't listened to what it is they're looking for. You might be trying to sell a lemon to someone who's trying to buy an apple. Do you know what I mean?
Correct.
And that's where the motivation is so important.
Yeah, 100%. Or as I said, if you listen and you hear something that your software has that your competitor doesn't have, you will only find that out if you are listening.
Mark, going back to the business, you've made it into a successful business now. And I mean, at what stage did you decide, there was obviously a moments when you sort of thought, this is all going to work out. I've secured a good customer, or I've just achieved something that's kind of like a line in the sand, and I'm getting to this point where I feel confident now I can scale the business a bit more. Like, when were those moments that you kind of found, yeah, I'm actually ready now to kind of jump to the next level?
Well, I have to roll back as to what the motivation of the software of the business was in the first place, Gavin. And that was when the realization after 2 years that we weren't doing well. And the reason we weren't doing well is we didn't keep proper accounting books and records. It's a very simple thing to do. We were keeping it on Word and Excel, which most people think is fine, but it's not. Because when the early days, when you get 4 or 5 customers, it's grand. If they're part paying you, it's easy to understand who owes you what, whatever. But when you get 50 customers or 100 customers and you don't know who owes you what you owe to the revenue, what you owe to your suppliers, how much money you have in the bank, it gets very unwieldy. And that was kind of a tipping point in my career, Gavin, where I realized there had to be a simpler way out there to have an accounting package. And hence that's where Big Red Book came along, where it's a really simple an easy to use product that's based on the old red ledgers people used to use, which your listeners have probably never heard of, but it was an old red book with, it looked like a spreadsheet inside essentially. So it's columns and rows where you wrote down the invoice number, the date, the person, the amount, et cetera, et cetera. So that was like the tipping point. So then you go off and I've got the big red book, and then we're at a crossroads in the business where I went to an Enterprise Ireland seminar about moving your product or service to the cloud. And there was 20 key points on that slide, and we ticked 80% of them. And it was that point that I knew that we needed to go to the cloud. So that was 2009. So your listeners now will have probably grown up with the cloud, and they won't understand that was really, really, really early adopters. So the first thing we have to do is then, what platform do you go on? Do you go on Amazon AWS? Do we go on Force.com, the Salesforce platform, or what? So we chose to go on the Microsoft platform, and we went down that route. And Microsoft were so happy that I think it was a 19-year-old company at the time, were betting their future on their cloud platform, that they supported it hugely. And we were a worldwide Microsoft case study for them. And it proved to be the best thing for us, because subsequently Microsoft have become the highest ranked security cloud platform in Europe. So it's the most secure platform you can have your data on, and all my customers' accounts are sitting on that. And it's in the Dublin data center here in Ireland, so it's even saved here in Ireland. So that was another tipping point. So then I had to go and transition from a traditional business where I sold desktop software to Gavin Gallagher, to selling Gavin Gallagher a cloud-based product, which was software as a service. So instead of getting €1,000 off Gavin, I was now getting €25 a month. So I had a €975 hole in my cash flow, but I still had 20 employees. So how do you bridge that? So you had to come up with unique ways of bringing in more cash, and then trying to educate the accountants at the time that this was the way to go. So it was a huge learning thing, both for my staff, both for me, both for my company, and both for our customers. But then fast forward, we're now 9 years in the cloud. The recurring income is phenomenal. It's going up all the time. We have a 94% retention rate. So you might say, well, why don't you have 100%? Well, there's 3 reasons why we don't retain those 6%. 1, they outgrow our product, which is understandable. 2, unfortunately in Ireland, as you know, Gavin, in the industry you're in, broadband isn't 100% coverage. So there's pockets in Ireland that don't have good broadband. So they can't use bigger cloud. They can't use any cloud product in those areas. So that's another reason. And they go back to our desktop product. And the third reason is they go out of business. And that's just, a fact of life. Businesses don't always last. But we're scaling all the time as a result of that. And so when you get to an inflection point where you realize that the business is consistently going up, that's the point, in answer to the question you asked, as to when you decide to scale. So we're looking at potentially going to Malta and Cyprus. Why? Essentially because of Brexit, and essentially because Cyprus and Malta have the same accounting rules as the UK and Ireland, and they're English speaking. They're smaller markets and easier to get traction in there. So they're markets we're looking at the moment. We're obviously looking at the UK. Probably will do that in a similar format to the way I did when we used to be the biggest channel partner for SAP, third largest software in the world. And here I grew that business to be the biggest partner in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And we did that by acquiring businesses in the UK. So on the side, I'm also looking at acquiring payroll companies in the UK. Why payroll companies? Because payroll and accounts are brother and sister.
Yeah.
And if I can get a UK-based cloud payroll company and marry in bigger cloud, I can sell bigger cloud to their customers, and then I can bring the cloud payroll back to Ireland and sell it to my customers here in Ireland.
Interesting. Yeah, you've got a great strategy kind of figured out there at this stage. I wanted to get into your sporting. You and I, as I mentioned, I actually put you down as the guy that introduced me to sport and all that kind of stuff, because I wasn't particularly sporting at the time. And fast forward 20 years, and you and I would both be kind of hanging around similar circles that are, into triathlon and all this kind of stuff. How important is the sports side of it to you in terms of just your mindset and stuff like that?
Oh, it's massively important. I mean, I played rugby from the age of 7 on, Gavin, and I think it's hugely important for parents that might be listening to your podcast, or even younger members, to get involved in a team sport. It's a huge network. You don't realize at the time, but the amount of people and friends I've made over the years from playing rugby is incredible. And you bump into them in business and in different sports clubs that you meet over the years. So sport has been always an integral part of my life. And then when I set up business, in order to be on top of your game, I find if I am at my fittest, I'm thinking more clearly, I am able to make decisions more clearly, and I am full of far more energy. Sometimes it drives the staff mad because there's so much energy. But if you own the business yourself, you really need to keep up your energy levels. And then that results in a better, healthier life and more longevity. And you're not out sick. I have staff and they're sick on a regular basis. I think I've been sick. I was sick once. I got shingles there about 2 or 3 years ago. And that was the first time in 20 something years that I've been out of the business. So it's huge. But the other thing, Gavin, is when I'm training and I'm on the bike, I come up with some of my best marketing ideas because you're clear, you don't have any noise, white noise outside, or people ask questions, or your door in your office being opened, and you're out in the the countryside of Wicklow, and you're just thinking. Or if I go on holidays, it drives the staff mad because I always come back with all these mad ideas. But it's because you have time to think, and your business is your baby, and you're always trying to think of how you can better it. And if your mind is cleaned and cleared up of all the noise, then you have more time to come up with the more unique ideas, I guess.
And so I know you've done 6 Ironman events now at this stage, and the amount of training that you have to do in order to kind of achieve that is pretty significant. But you've basically built the business to actually give you that freedom now at this stage. How many staff do you have today?
Yeah, so we've 25 staff, and you're right, I have built the business to be giving that freedom. For many, many years, I used to go off to Mallorca for 5 to 6 weeks during the summer, which was fantastic. Left the business to run itself. The training, you say, I don't know if people will know what an Ironman is, but it's a 3.8K, 180 kilometer cycle and a full marathon, a 42.2 kilometer run, all back to back. So you have 17 hours to do it, and it's quite the challenge. So in order to do that, you have to put in a significant amount of training, and that takes upwards of 20 hours a week, as well as running a business, being very involved in my family as well, and making sure you get out to see their sports games or any of their functions. So you do have to manage it, like you project manage a lot of your building work, Gavin. It's all about just having the timings perfect. So if I can get up early, I do get up early, and I'm at the pool in UCD for 6. I could have an hour or 2 hours done before I'm actually in work before 9. And it's also building, I'm lucky in terms of the office is 6 minutes from the house. So I don't have the big commute time that a lot of people will have. Yeah. So that then gives me the commute time that some people would have to put into my sport and my training. Then when the girls were younger, I would wait till I went to bed, and then I'll do my training after that. So it's a matter of just fitting the training in around your life and making sure that one doesn't affect the other. That's important.
Doesn't take over your life. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can keep it balanced. I mean, sometimes it does get out of control, and you need to, pull yourself back a little bit. But don't get me wrong. The Ironman is pretty intense. It's pretty insane, and it does take an awful lot of training, a lot of mental strength. But the euphoria at the end of it is worth.
Yeah, I hope to experience it next August. 12 months.
Well, you were lucky that it got cancelled. So
yeah, it got cancelled 2 years in a row, which is the most annoying thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but look, just Gavin, when you're going into that, remember that you can't control the weather. I've had 2 in 40 degree heat, which were unbelievable.
40-degree heat.
Yeah, I've had one was in Austria. It was in a glacier lake that it would definitely have a wetsuit, and swimming is not my best sport of the 3. And it was a non-wetsuit swim. The water got over 24.5 degrees. It was that hot. So 2 in 40 degrees, and then I had 1 in thunderstorms where they had people helicoptered off the mountain. And then one of the ones in 40-degree heat, there was 40% of the 3,000 starters didn't finish.
40%. My God. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough race, all right. Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to the point where I go and do mine. Mark, just in terms of some advice that you would give to people who are kind of starting out their career and, the career path that you've taken so far, I mean, is there anything that you would have done different now? Or are there kind of places that you should kind of learn the ropes before you sort of start your own business? You started your own business quite early, if I recall.
It was 27.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
the bit of time that you put into
making business owners a lot of money, because I was pretty good at sales. And I said, look, if I can do that for them, I can do it for myself. But I said, look, it isn't what it seems to be at the start. I thought exactly that, I'm going to make all this money myself. But when I went from a business where you had the support around you in terms of the administration, the purchasing manager, the delivery guys, where you had a structure there, and you had 8 hours a day to sell, and that's all you had to do, and everybody else then took over the order and deliveries after that, to go into your own business where you had 6 hours to do all the deliveries and administration and only 2 hours to sell. It was a rude awakening, really rude awakening. So that you need to understand that you're not going to have the same amount of time, because there's only a finite amount of hours every day, as you know.
Yeah.
And there's only a finite amount of time in business hours. So 9 to 5:30 is generally what a business is open, unless you're obviously selling on the internet. And so you have to understand that. You also have to understand that as I said earlier, the key skills required to run a business aren't necessarily skills that you'll have yourself. So you need to buy in people for that. One thing I would have changed, Gavin, I would have been better funded. I only put £2,500 at the time, it was Irish pounds at the time, and my partner put £2,500. So when we set the business up with £5,000, that was not enough money. So I would really stress on any of your listeners out there to do a proper budget, do a proper business plan. Don't be naive and underestimate our budget. The costs are going to spiral out of control no matter how good you are at keeping on top of them. So I would make sure that you're well funded before you do it, and give yourself a decent amount of time. And that's not just yourself, that's your wife or your husband or your partner, whoever it is. If you're going into business on your own, you're going to say, well, I'm going to give this X amount of time. Now, don't say it's 6 months. Don't say it's 12 months, because that's not going to work. You need to give it 3 years. So you need to have a runway of cash flow to keep you going for 3 years, to meet any rainy days or any unexpected costs. And that's probably one of the key things that have changed. And I'd be more, I guess another thing I'd be more reliant on, and I hope this isn't going to come across sexist, I would be more reliant on the female that would be in the business to help select and interview people. I think ladies have far more intuition than men. And I'm very gullible, and I take people at face value. And sometimes I've interviewed people and say, oh yeah, they're great, and they haven't worked out at all. Like I took on a sales guy in the UK, Gavin. I don't know if I've ever told you this. And after 6 months, he had sold nothing. Now, he came with an unbelievable pedigree, selling lots and lots in his previous company. But whatever it was, he didn't do anything. I went over to fire him. He kind of sensed I was coming over to do that. He didn't give me the keys to the office back. He didn't give me the laptop back. And he hid the BMW 318 IS that I had given him. And I ended up having to get a private investigator to find the car. It took him 6 weeks, and we found it parked in a forest somewhere in the back end of the UK.
What was his whole deal? Like, I mean, did he just bullshit you into it, or was he actually a good salesperson previously?
Yeah. Okay. Look, to give the guy a little bit of fairness, I guess, I don't know what you
credit.
Credit. He came from a company that had lots of support, big company, was generating the leads for him, and was doing all the ancillary work around a salesperson to us, which was a new startup in the UK, essentially, where he had to generate his own leads, close his own leads, etc., etc. And he just couldn't step up to the market.
Yeah. I've seen that happen before. All right.
Yeah. So I think, depending on if you've got a female in the business, depending on their intuition in the interview process, I think that's helped me now, because we've got a COO in the business here. She basically does all the interviews, and it's always a team, and we tag team on the questions, and it works out much better. And we're very lucky in that people have stayed with us for years and years and years. We don't have a huge turnover in staff, and that's because we have got that down pat now at this stage, Gavin, and we can understand and read personalities and understand that they'll stay with us.
Yeah. That's great. Well, Marc, I'm conscious of the time. I was just, if people wanted to reach out and connect with you and investigate your product, where's the best place to connect with you or find you?
Yeah, bigredcloud.com. So we're a simple and easy to use accounts and payroll software, as I said, across vertical. So any type of business, no matter how large your turnover is, once you have simple accounting requirements, we embrace all the latest technology, Gavin, as well. So we have AI bringing in automated purchase invoices into the system. We have open banking with machine learning. So we cut down an awful lot of the day-to-day manual, stress that people have just inputting manual stuff. It cuts down errors, cuts down times, and saves a significant amount of money. So bigredcloud.com. I'm Marc at bigredcloud.com is my email. Happy to answer any questions, and you're very accessible. It's Marc O'Dwyer on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. But
that's Marc with a C.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. My parents' choice, not mine, but Marc with a C. Thank you, Gavin.
All right, Marc, it's been a great pleasure chatting with you, and look forward to catching up with you soon. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Facade. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, please take a moment to leave a review over on iTunes, or indeed share it with a friend. It really helps grow the podcast and reach more people. If you have any questions or topics you would like me to cover in future episodes, please connect with me via my Facebook group, Behind the Facade Community. Alternatively, You will always find me on social media by my handle Gavin J. Gallagher. You can stay up to date with all the projects I'm working on by joining my tribe. Do that by adding your name and email over at gavinjgallagher.com. That's all for now, folks. See you back here next week.